Breaking news, a leaked transcript of a call between Trump envoy Steve Witkoff and one of Putin's top aides. Witkoff, a real estate lawyer, according to a transcript published by Bloomberg, is quoted advising a senior Kremlin aide last month about how to strike a deal with Trump. And he urges the aide to praise Trump on his Gaza deal as a way to curry favor and get Trump on board. Here's the quote from Witkoff. He says, just reiterate that you congratulate the president on this achievement, that you supported it, that you respect that he is a man of peace, and you're really glad to have seen it happen. Putin's aide replies to Witkoff, I agree with you that he will congratulate. He will say that Mr. Trump is a real peace man and so and so. Well, that's exactly what happened. Putin called Trump 2 days later. That's the day they spoke for 2.5 hours, if you remember. And Trump called that conversation very productive. Well, the following day, Zelensky visited the White House, and that had been sort of set up in the anticipation that Trump was going to provide Ukraine those longer-range missiles. Well, that could hit Moscow. But after the call with Putin, Zelensky shows up, and boom, no.
Okay, so this is a story about leaked audio transcripts that have absolutely exploded across Washington and are now fueling bipartisan fury over a Trump envoy who was caught on tape secretly coaching top Kremlin officials on how to butter up President Trump and psychologically manipulate him into giving Russia what it wants in sensitive Ukraine peace negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, who was supposed to be representing American interests in these incredibly high-stakes diplomatic negotiations, was recorded on WhatsApp calls telling Putin's top aide Yuri Ushakov exactly how to play Trump psychologically and what specific buttons to push and what language to use to get him to agree to deals favorable to Russia and unfavorable to Ukraine. The leaked audio has lawmakers from both parties calling Witkoff a traitor who cannot be trusted with American secrets, while Trump is shrugging the whole thing off as standard negotiation, even though he openly admits he has not actually listened to the recordings himself and is defending conduct he has not bothered to review. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, seeing all of these transcripts, tweeting, quote, this is a major problem and one of the many reasons why these ridiculous sideshows and secret meetings need to stop. Allow Secretary of State Marco Rubio to do his job in a fair and objective manner. Republican Congressman Don Bacon also posting, quote, it's clear Witkoff fully favors the Russians. He should be fired. Blunt words.
Let me walk you through exactly what these leaked transcripts reveal and why this represents such an extraordinary scandal that goes far beyond normal diplomatic communications or back-channel negotiations, because understanding the specific content of what Witkoff told the Kremlin is absolutely essential for grasping why even Republicans who normally defend everything Trump does are using words like traitor and demanding his immediate termination from any role involving American national security interests. Bloomberg published the transcripts on November 26, 2025, showing Witkoff in direct private communication with Yuri Ushakov, one of Vladimir Putin's most trusted and longest-serving foreign policy advisors, who has been at the absolute center of Russian diplomatic strategy for decades and who reports directly to Putin himself on the most sensitive matters. These were not formal diplomatic exchanges through proper State Department channels with appropriate oversight. These were private WhatsApp calls where Trump's personal envoy was giving the Kremlin a detailed roadmap for how to manipulate the American president. In the transcripts, Witkoff is heard telling Ushakov, you've got to say, look, they want this deal, and you've got to convince Trump with this, essentially scripting specific talking points for the Russians to use when they communicate with Trump. He advised Putin to call Trump directly before Ukrainian President Zelensky's scheduled visit to Washington, timing that was specifically designed to give Russia the first opportunity to shape Trump's thinking and frame the issues before he heard from the Ukrainian side of the conflict. This is not diplomacy in any recognizable sense of the word. This is an American official who was supposed to be representing United States interests, actively coaching a hostile foreign power on psychological manipulation tactics to use against his own president to advance that foreign power strategic objectives at the expense of American allies. The implications of this are absolutely staggering when you think carefully about what it actually means for American national security and foreign policy. Witkoff was supposedly representing the United States in extraordinarily sensitive negotiations about ending the war in Ukraine, a brutal conflict that has killed hundreds of thousands of people and displaced millions more and destabilized global security in ways that will reverberate for decades. His job as a presidential envoy was to advance American interests and the interests of our Ukrainian allies who are fighting for their survival against Russian aggression. Instead, the audio reveals him actively working to help Russia get better outcomes by teaching the Kremlin exactly how to handle Trump and what psychological approaches will be most effective. This is the kind of conduct that in previous eras of American history would have triggered immediate investigations and potentially criminal charges for acting as an unregistered foreign agent working on behalf of a hostile power. The Kremlin's response to the leak has been remarkable for what it confirmed rather than what it denied. Yuri Ushakov himself appeared on Russian state television on November 27, 2025, and directly acknowledged that the calls happened exactly as reported and that the transcripts Bloomberg published are authentic and accurate. He called the leak unacceptable and admitted that using WhatsApp for such sensitive communications created vulnerability that allowed the conversations to be intercepted, essentially confirming that yes, these conversations occurred exactly as reported, and yes, the content accurately reflects what was discussed. He then praised Putin as Trump's genuine peacemaker, a characterization that tells you everything you need to know about how Russia views this relationship and what they expect to get out of their cultivation of Trump's inner circle. Representatives from both parties in Congress have responded with fury that crosses normal partisan lines in ways that are genuinely unusual in today's polarized political environment. Lawmakers who rarely agree on anything and who normally view every issue through partisan lenses are united in calling Witkoff a traitor who cannot be trusted with American secrets under any circumstances. The bipartisan nature of this condemnation is extremely significant because it shows that even Republicans who normally defend everything Trump does and dismiss every criticism as partisan attack recognize that this particular situation crosses a fundamental line that cannot be excused or explained away. You simply cannot have American officials coaching hostile foreign powers on how to manipulate the president, regardless of your partisan affiliation. That is a betrayal of the basic responsibilities that come with representing the United States in any capacity. Trump's response has been characteristically dismissive, despite the severity of what the audio recordings actually reveal about his envoy's conduct. He called it standard negotiation and defended Witkoff publicly without actually engaging with the substance of what the transcripts show he was doing. Trump admitted openly that he has not listened to the audio himself. He is defending conduct he has not actually reviewed and does not actually know the details of, based presumably on personal loyalty to Witkoff rather than any assessment of whether the conduct was appropriate or defensible. This pattern of defending allies without examining evidence has gotten Trump into trouble repeatedly throughout his political career and appears to be happening again here with potentially serious consequences for American foreign policy. Alright, so let me walk you through in much more detail what these leaked transcripts actually reveal and why intelligence professionals and lawmakers from both parties are treating this as one of the most serious scandals involving a Trump official since he returned to office, because understanding the specific content and the specific context of Witkoff's communications with the Kremlin is absolutely essential for evaluating whether this represents genuine evidence of betrayal of American interests or whether it is being spun and mischaracterized for political purposes. Steve Witkoff is not a career diplomat or foreign policy professional with decades of experience navigating complex international negotiations. He is a real estate developer and longtime Trump friend and business associate who was appointed as a special envoy based entirely on his personal negotiations. He is a real estate developer and longtime Trump friend and business associate who was appointed as a special envoy based entirely on his personal dual relationship with the president rather than any particular expertise in international negotiations or Russian affairs or Ukraine policy. This pattern of appointing personal loyalists and friends to sensitive positions rather than experienced professionals who actually know what they are doing has been a hallmark of Trump's approach to staffing throughout both of his terms, and the Witkoff scandal illustrates exactly why critics have warned repeatedly that this approach creates serious and unacceptable risks for American interests. The Bloomberg transcripts published on November 26, 2025, capture WhatsApp calls between Witkoff and Yuri Ushakov, Putin's senior foreign policy advisor, who has served in the highest levels of Kremlin diplomatic positions for decades and who is considered one of the most skilled and experienced diplomatic operators in Russia's entire government apparatus. Ushakov is not some junior official or mid-level bureaucrat. He is a central figure in Russian foreign policy who reports directly to Putin on the most sensitive matters and who has been personally involved in every major Russian diplomatic initiative for many years. The fact that Trump's personal envoy was having private WhatsApp conversations with someone at this level of the Russian government, completely outside normal diplomatic channels and without appropriate oversight or documentation, is itself remarkable and deeply concerning to anyone who understands how sensitive diplomatic communications are supposed to work. The content of those conversations is what has triggered the firestorm that is now consuming Washington. Witkoff is heard on the recordings actively coaching Ushakov on exactly how to approach Trump to get the outcomes Russia wants from the Ukraine negotiations. He tells Ushakov, "You've got to say, look, they want this deal," literally scripting specific language and talking points for the Russians to use when they communicate with the American president. He advises on strategic timing, suggesting that Putin should call Trump directly before Zelensky's scheduled visit to Washington so that Russia gets the first opportunity to frame the issues and shape Trump's thinking before he hears the Ukrainian perspective on the war and what Ukraine needs from its American ally. This is not diplomacy in any normal or acceptable sense of the word. Diplomats negotiate on behalf of their country's interests. They advocate for their nation's positions and try to get the best possible outcomes for the people they represent. They do not coach the other side on how to manipulate their own leadership or provide psychological profiles of their president to hostile foreign powers. What the transcripts show is Witkoff essentially functioning as a Russian asset, providing actionable intelligence about how to handle the American president to advance Russian strategic objectives. Whether he was doing this consciously as a deliberate betrayal of his responsibilities, or whether he was simply so eager to make a deal and please his friend Trump that he lost sight of whose interests he was supposed to represent, the practical effect is exactly the same. He was helping Russia at America's expense and at Ukraine's expense. The timing advice Witkoff provided is particularly damaging because it reveals strategic thinking specifically designed to disadvantage Ukraine in its competition for Trump's support and attention. By telling Russia to have Putin call Trump before Zelensky's scheduled visit, Witkoff was helping Moscow get ahead of Ukraine in the competition for the American president's attention and sympathy and framing of the issues. First impressions matter enormously in negotiations and in personal relationships, and Witkoff was ensuring Russia got the first impression and the first opportunity to shape how Trump thought about the issues at stake. This is not neutral facilitation of peace talks as an honest broker. This is actively tilting the playing field toward one party at the expense of another party that happens to be an American ally fighting for its survival. Ushakov's confirmation of the calls on Russian state television is extraordinary because Russian officials almost never confirm compromising information about their relationships with American officials or their intelligence operations. The fact that Ushakov went on air and publicly acknowledged that the conversations happened exactly as reported while calling the leak unacceptable suggests Moscow calculated that outright denial was impossible given the specificity of the transcripts and the apparent quality of the recordings, and that it was better to acknowledge the truth and try to shape the narrative than to be caught in obvious lies that would damage their credibility further. His admission that using WhatsApp created vulnerability is essentially a confession that yes, we were having these inappropriate back-channel communications with Trump's envoy, and yes, we got caught because of poor operational security. Ushakov's characterization of Putin as Trump's genuine peacemaker reveals exactly how Russia views this relationship and what they expect to gain from their cultivation of Trump and his inner circle. From Moscow's perspective, Trump is someone who can be worked and manipulated, someone whose desire for deals and personal relationships and flattery can be exploited by skilled operators to advance Russian interests, even at the expense of American interests and American allies. The Witkoff transcript suggests this Russian assessment is accurate and that people in Trump's inner circle are actively and perhaps unwittingly helping Moscow execute this strategy of manipulation. The bipartisan fury in Congress reflects recognition that this crosses lines that should never be crossed, regardless of partisan affiliation or political loyalty. Representatives who normally defend Trump reflexively and dismiss every criticism as partisan attack are joining Democrats in condemning Witkoff and demanding accountability and immediate termination. The word traitor is being used by lawmakers from both parties, extraordinary and almost unprecedented language that is almost never applied to presidential appointees, regardless of how controversial their conduct might be. The bipartisan nature of the condemnation is significant because it shows this is not just another partisan attack that can be dismissed. Republicans who care about national security and American interests and who understand what was revealed in these transcripts are genuinely alarmed by the implications. Trump's defense of Witkoff as engaging in standard negotiation is completely disconnected from the reality of what the transcripts actually show. Standard negotiation does not involve coaching the other side on how to manipulate your own leadership. Standard negotiation does not involve providing psychological profiles of your president to hostile foreign powers. Standard negotiation does not involve timing advice designed to disadvantage American allies in their competition for American support. What the transcripts show is not negotiation at all in any recognizable sense. It is collaboration with a foreign power against American interests and the interests of American allies. Trump's admission that he has not actually listened to the audio while publicly defending it is a familiar and troubling pattern. He defends allies based on personal loyalty rather than evidence, deciding first that someone is on his team and therefore must be defended, and then constructing justifications that do not require actually examining what they did or said. This approach has repeatedly gotten Trump into trouble when the conduct he defended turned out to be worse than he acknowledged, or when the evidence he dismissed turned out to be accurate, and the Witkoff situation appears to be following the same trajectory with potentially serious consequences. The intelligence community implications of this leak are profound and concerning, regardless of who was ultimately responsible for releasing the recordings. Former CIA officials and intelligence analysts speaking to reporters have identified several possible sources for the leak. American intelligence agencies who may have been monitoring these communications as part of routine counterintelligence operations against Russian officials, European intelligence services who may have intercepted the calls through their own surveillance capabilities, or Ukraine itself, which has extremely strong motivation to prevent Trump from cutting deals that would abandon Ukrainian interests and reward Russian aggression. If American agencies leak this material to the press, that represents an extraordinary and almost unprecedented break between intelligence professionals and the administration they nominally serve and are supposed to support. Intelligence agencies are supposed to provide information to policymakers through classified channels, not to expose and embarrass presidential appointees through leaks to journalists. A leak from American intelligence would suggest that professionals within those agencies have concluded that normal channels for raising concerns about compromised officials are ineffective, and that public exposure is the only remaining way to stop conduct they view as genuinely damaging to national security. Okay, so let us break down exactly what this leaked audio scandal means and why it has Washington erupting with bipartisan fury over a Trump envoy caught on tape coaching the Kremlin on how to psychologically manipulate the American president to advance Russian interests at the expense of Ukraine and American national security. Point number 1, Bloomberg published transcripts on November 26, 2025, showing Trump envoy Steve Witkoff on private WhatsApp calls, telling Putin's senior aide Yuri Ushakov exactly how to approach Trump and what specific language to use to convince him to support deals favorable to Russia. This is not diplomacy. This is an American official coaching a hostile foreign power on psychological manipulation tactics to use against his own president. Point number 2, Witkoff specifically advised Russia to have Putin call Trump directly before Zelensky's scheduled visit to Washington, timing designed to give Moscow the first opportunity to shape Trump's thinking and frame the issues before he heard from the Ukrainian side. This is actively tilting negotiations toward Russia at the expense of an American ally fighting for survival. Point number 3, Ushakov confirmed the calls happened on Russian state television on November 27, 2025, calling the leak unacceptable, but admitting the WhatsApp vulnerability and praising Putin as Trump's genuine peacemaker. The Kremlin essentially confirmed the transcripts are completely authentic and accurate. Point number 4, lawmakers from both parties are calling Witkoff a traitor who cannot be trusted with American secrets under any circumstances. The bipartisan nature of this condemnation is extremely significant. Even Republicans who normally defend everything Trump does recognize this crosses fundamental lines that cannot be excused. Point number 5, Trump defended Witkoff as engaging in standard negotiation while openly admitting he has not actually listened to the audio recordings. He is defending conduct he has not reviewed and does not actually know the details of based on personal loyalty rather than any assessment of whether it was appropriate. Point number 6, former CIA officials suspect the leak came from American intelligence agencies or European services or Ukraine itself seeking to expose Witkoff's pro-Russia tilt and sabotage negotiations viewed as dangerously favorable to Moscow. The leak itself may have burned valuable surveillance operations and sources. Point number 7, the scandal connects directly to broader concerns about Trump's Ukraine peace plan and widespread fears that his team is selling out Zelensky for Putin. Frozen military aid and NATO tensions create context where Witkoff's Kremlin coaching looks like part of a deliberate pattern rather than an isolated incident. Point number 8, the leak revives Trump-Putin puppet narratives that damaged him significantly during his first term. The critical difference now is there is actual audio evidence rather than just allegations and inference, viral proof that can be played and replayed, showing a Trump official actively working with Russia against American interests. Point number 9, whoever leaked this material apparently decided the damage to Witkoff and potentially to valuable surveillance operations was worth it to expose what they viewed as conduct genuinely threatening American national security interests. That calculation reveals how seriously intelligence professionals consider this particular situation. So where does all of this leave Trump as he faces bipartisan demands to fire Witkoff immediately while trying to pursue his Ukraine peace agenda? He is caught between personal loyalty to a longtime friend and the political reality that keeping Witkoff in any sensitive position is now completely radioactive and indefensible. The audio exists and cannot be denied or dismissed. Ushakov himself confirmed it on Russian state television. The content is devastating, regardless of how Trump tries to spin it as normal negotiation tactics. And lawmakers from his own party are using words like traitor that make continued defense increasingly difficult politically. The Ukraine peace talks that Witkoff was supposedly facilitating are now in serious jeopardy, regardless of what Trump decides about his future. How can the United States credibly negotiate with Russia when a key American envoy was caught on tape coaching the Russians on how to manipulate the American president? How can Ukraine trust that American negotiators are genuinely representing allied interests rather than secretly working with Moscow to advance Russian objectives? How can Trump claim to be getting a good deal for America when the audio shows his own team teaching Russia exactly how to get what it wants? The intelligence implications extend far beyond just this particular scandal. If American agencies leak this material, the relationship between Trump and the intelligence community has broken down in ways that will affect national security for years to come. Intelligence professionals who believe normal channels are ineffective and who resort to leaking sensitive material will not be trusted with classified information, creating a spiral of distrust that makes everyone less safe. But intelligence professionals who watch American officials coaching hostile foreign powers and do nothing about it also fail their fundamental responsibilities to protect American interests. The political implications heading into the 2026 midterm elections are significant and potentially lasting. Trump-Putin puppet narratives that seemed to fade somewhat after the Mueller investigation ended can now be refreshed with actual audio evidence rather than just circumstantial allegations. Democrats will play these clips endlessly in campaign advertising to argue that Trump's team is compromised and that his foreign policy serves Russian rather than American interests. Republicans who defended Trump through previous Russia controversies will have to decide whether to keep defending or whether this finally crosses lines they cannot excuse or explain away. The Witkoff scandal connects to the broader pattern of chaos and scandal that has defined Trump's second term from the beginning. Kash Patel's perjury allegations and FBI purge. Pam Bondi's Epstein files contradictions. The lethal force controversies, the impeachment resolutions, the leaked FBI memo, and now a senior envoy caught on tape coaching the Kremlin on how to manipulate the president. The accumulation of scandals creates a narrative of an administration that is corrupt and compromised and out of control, a narrative that this audio dramatically reinforces with evidence that simply cannot be dismissed as fake news or partisan attack. Trump's decision on Witkoff will reveal a great deal about his priorities and his judgment going forward. If he fires Witkoff, he acknowledges the conduct was unacceptable and accepts the political cost of admitting his friend betrayed American interests while representing the United States. If he keeps Witkoff, he signals that personal loyalty to friends matters more than the appearance or reality of working with hostile foreign powers, and that bipartisan outrage will not move him regardless of how serious the evidence is. Neither option is good for Trump politically. The damage is done regardless of what he decides now because the audio exists permanently. The fundamental question raised by this scandal is whether Trump's team can be trusted to represent American interests in sensitive negotiations, or whether personal relationships and deal-making instincts have compromised their judgment to the point where they actively help adversaries at America's expense. The audio provides concrete evidence that at least one senior Trump envoy was doing exactly that, and the question becomes whether this reflects the broader culture and approach of Trump's entire foreign policy team, or whether Witkoff was a rogue actor whose conduct does not represent the administration's actual approach. That is the story of a Trump official exposed in leaked audio coaching the Kremlin on Putin-Trump deals, a scandal that has triggered bipartisan fury and revived serious questions about whether Trump's inner circle is compromised by relationships with Russia that put American interests at genuine risk. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. Should Trump fire Witkoff immediately, or is this being overblown by his critics? Who do you think leaked the audio, and why did they decide to do it now? And what does this scandal mean for Trump's ability to negotiate any kind of Ukraine peace deal going forward? Hit subscribe because this story is developing rapidly and there will be much more to cover as the fallout continues and Trump decides what to do about an envoy caught on tape helping Russia. See you in the next one.